And greetings, happy Wednesday. Welcome here to the Steve Deace Show, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I am Steve Deace, and we are brought to you by our friends over at BIRCH Gold. Have you seen the latest news? I mean, we were talking about fourth turnings yesterday. They're talking recessions, depressions, all kinds of different forecasts, positive and negative between now and 2030. We're looking at maybe a mass amount of fraud exposed within Social Security and Medicare any moment now, so who knows what impact that's going to have. Anyway, gold is a safe haven in these kinds of economic times, and BIRCH Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. BIRCH Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket to do so. So protect your future today. Text Steve to 989-898. Text Steve to 989-898. Get your free info kit on gold and a copy of the Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with a foreword from Don Jr. himself. No obligation. Just information. BIRCH Gold. They've earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings, so you can count on them too. Text my name, Steve, to the number 989-898 today. Text Steve to 989-898 today. All right, coming up at the bottom of the hour, it'll be time for some buy, sell, or hold, and then the bottom of next hour, Daniel Horwitz, the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, is going to join us. It's just going to be like, hey, we've done this before. Some of the major topics to discuss here on the show with Daniel. Some of the greatest hits will get re-racked with him coming up later on in the program. But before we do all of that, we begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Democrats finally have their message.
We begin tonight with Musk and Big Balls.
Big balls.
Big balls.
Big Balls, who worked for Elon Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency, Doge.
In the one case of the Big Balls kid, a literal teenager.
Big Balls online, Big Balls here that Katie's talking about.
A 19-year-old that goes by the username Big Balls.
So that would be one way that we could refer to him.
Young computer whizzes, the aforementioned Big Balls.
Because who among us doesn't feel better about big balls, big balls, big balls?
Yes, Democrats finally coalesced around a message, and rogue judges are getting in on the action. In the latest mind-blowing example of a judiciary run amok, this little pisshand's name is John Bates. He's a U.S. District Court judge who just told the Trump administration they have to restore web pages, yes, web pages, on various HHS websites that deal with meatball surgery and chemical castration in the name of gender. By the way, this same district court judge is the one who presided over the case of J6er Matt Perna, one of the 5 J6 defendants who sadly committed suicide amid the out-of-control judiciary in the Biden administration. Last night, Trump personally welcomed home American Mark Fogel, a teacher detained unlawfully for more than 3 years in Russia. This morning in Brussels, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth says no to Ukraine.
The United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement. Instead, any security guarantee must be backed by capable European and non-European troops.
Nevertheless, as I said earlier, Democrats are finally singing the same tune.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against Doge. We'll fight Elon Musk.
At the Oval Office yesterday, Trump and Elon Musk met together for the former to sign an executive order giving the Department of Government Efficiency even more authority to look into cutting the federal leviathan.
You know, there's crazy things like just cursory examination of Social Security, and we've got people in there that are 150 years old. Now, do you know anyone that's 150? I don't. Okay. They should be on the Guinness Book of World Records. They're missing out. So, you know, that's a case where, like, I think they're probably dead. It's my guess. Or they should be very famous, one of the two.
Border Czar Tom Homan is once again going to war with the Pope after the Pope sent a letter to American bishops in which he rebuked the Trump administration's deportation plans.
I got harsh words for the Pope. Pope wants to fix the Catholic Church. I'm saying this as a lifelong Catholic. I was baptized Catholic. I was First Communion as a Catholic, Confirmation as a Catholic. He ought to fix the Catholic Church and concentrate on his work and leave border enforcement to us. He wants to attack us from securing our border. He's got a wall around the Vatican, does he not? So he's got to wall around and protect his people and himself, but we can't have a wall around the United States. So I wish he'd stick to the Catholic Church and fix that.
Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna will be in charge of a new congressional committee.
I have been entrusted by Speaker Mike Johnson and Chairman James Comer to lead the House Oversight Task Force on Declassification of Federal Secrets. Together with the help of the White House, our intelligence allies, the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, we will be conducting investigations into the following: the assassinations of JFK, RFK, and Dr. Martin Luther King, unidentified aerial phenomena, also known as UAPs, unidentified submerged objects, also known as USOs, the Epstein client list, the origins of COVID-19, and the 9/11 files.
Once again, though, finally, nothing is getting past the Democrats this week. Here's Dana Bash.
Hairy balls.
At an AI summit in France yesterday, Vice President J.D. Vance warned other nations against partnering with hostile powers like China in the AI race.
Now, we've also watched as hostile foreign adversaries have weaponized AI software to rewrite history, surveil users, and censor speech. This is hardly new, of course. As they do with other tech, some authoritarian regimes have stolen and used AI to strengthen their military, intelligence, and surveillance capabilities, capture foreign data, and create propaganda to undermine other nations' national security. I want to be clear. This administration will block such efforts, full stop. We will safeguard American AI and chip technologies from theft and misuse, work with our allies and partners to strengthen and extend these protections, and close pathways to adversaries attaining AI capabilities that threaten all of our people. And I would also remind our international friends here today that partnering with such regimes, it never pays off in the long term. From CCTV to 5G equipment, we're all familiar with cheap tech in the marketplace that's been heavily subsidized and exported by authoritarian regimes. But as I know, and I think some of us in this room have learned from experience, partnering with them means chaining your nation to an authoritarian master that seeks to infiltrate, dig in, and seize your information infrastructure. Should a deal seem too good to be true, just remember the old adage that we learned in Silicon Valley: if you aren't paying for the product, you are the product.
And finally, one more time, just to show you and drive this message home, Democrats are finally locked in on a message.
We have to f*** Trump. Please don't tell my children that I just did that.
And that's what happened while we were away.
So it might be a challenge for me to get through everything in Aaron's montage here in just this segment. All right. Because I think we need to... I think, as our friend and colleague Daniel Horwitz, who will join us later today, is fond of saying we need to, and he's quoting Wayne Gretzky when he says this, got to skate to where the puck is. Got to skate to where the puck is. Like, knowing what we know now. Imagine if we started doing the shows, say, January 20th and February 20th of March 2020, that we'd started doing on March 20th of 2020. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, imagine if we could have started doing those shows a month or two ahead of time. How much more impactful could that messaging have been, right?
Sure.
Okay. Likewise, I know, and believe me, it is hilarious. I mean, we have reduced them to just sheer stupidity. I mean, we're determining the talking points now so that big balls and hairy balls have to be referred to on network television repeatedly. Okay. They're coming up with their own hymns. I mean, essentially, we went from them fulfilling the generational fears. We used to talk about how the times that when I was growing up listening to Mark Levin or Rush Limbaugh or Glenn Beck, the times that they warned us would be at hand if we didn't stop the left, we're in those times right now. Those are the conversations you had the last year or two, right? Just open manifestation, political policy manifestations of doctrines of demons, just open, right? Well, now the script has flipped and the paradigm has shifted. Now we are watching them manifest the complete and total stupidity and tomfoolery that people like me told you was at the heart of their belief system the entire time. There was no there there. They cannot handle any pushback. They cannot win an argument. I mean, they can't. And the reason why is because what they believe is literally insane. And that's why they have to change terminologies, and they have to change definitions, and they have to go to war with reality, because they're at war with reality. It's the old communist thing, the sky is green. That's literally the basis for everything they believe. They're Romans 1 incarnate. These are people who delight in creating new ways to do evil and encouraging others as they do the same. They cannot win an actual argument. They can't. Because there's no argument for what they think and believe. Just an abandonment of reality. And a gathering of others who, because they're getting their desires fulfilled, their identity fulfilled, who are willing to do the same. And then they gather enough of them that they decide, we're going to go ahead and impose this unreality now on you. And it's called tolerance, of course. So as we are watching them now with power stripped away, with the talking points deflated, with nobody currently in serious power in the Republican Party who either believes or could get away with cowering in fear to their talking points at this particular moment, all of that is stripped away. And now all that's left is a rather portly, small equipped, naked emperor that we're all just laughing at now. But now is a time I think we need to skate to where the puck is. Because an old foe, something I have done many shows about, I've done many speaking engagements about, something I helped lead an entire campaign against that at the time made American history. Their religion has relics too. And an old foe has emerged here in the early days of the Trump administration. And if not dealt with, and if not recognized, will do to the second Trump term what the scamdemic did to the first one. I can't go back and take the data we found on March 20th, April 20th, and May 20th. I can't go back and retroactively turn the clock back or do the Christopher Reeve Superman thing where I fly around the earth and backwards to go back to January and February 20th and try to get ahead of the narrative with that data. I can't do it. What's done is done. But I am going to try to see the signs of the times and get ahead of it this time. Because just like there is a uniparty, folks, there's a unijudiciary too. Just like there's a uniparty, there's a unijudiciary too. And here's the thing you need to understand. These judges are a joke, but they're not joking. You need to also understand that the people were always meant to be the final word on what the Constitution meant. That's why you can't ratify it without the consent of the people. In order to ratify it, amend it, you either have to have the people vote up and down on said amendments, or they have to then vote for the proxies who would go to a convention and consider the amendments there. You can't touch the Constitution without the will of the people. There cannot be a Constitution without the will of the people. Congress didn't come out with a Constitution and said, behold, on stone tablets, 18 enumerated powers and a Bill of Rights. No. They went in a lab, came out with the best they had, but then ultimately the people had to decide whether this was going to be a country or not. And that's why the Constitution begins with the words, we the people, not these the courts, not this the bureaucracy, or even here the landmass. It begins with we the people. In our country, the people form the union, and the people are sovereign. There is nothing in the Constitution that says the courts are the superior branch. Well, Steve, doesn't it teach that they're equal branches? No, it doesn't even teach that, actually. In fact, they are the systemically weakest branch of them all. The judicial branch is the only branch that is wholly reliant on the other two for its own existence. It can't appoint, it can't confirm on its own, it can't fund itself. It can't enforce any of its own edicts. It has no standing police force, it has no standing army. It is wholly and totally reliant on the other two branches. And it was meant to be the weakest. I mean, after all, why would you fight against a king only to then establish a government when another unelected body has all powerful? That would be kind of stupid and foolish, right? Which is exactly why they didn't do that. And Madison made this very clear in places like Federalist 78, Federalist 81. Many of Thomas Jefferson's public writings, all throughout his public life, were Jeremiah-like weeping prophet-esque stuff, warning about what will happen if you buy into the canard of judicial supremacy. Now, what exactly is judicial supremacy? What does it mean? Does it mean, well, when a ruling comes down we don't like, then it's bad, and when a ruling comes down that we do, it's good? Unfortunately, it kind of does mean that, because we've lost what the actual meaning of it is. So let's take a few steps back. The idea of judicial supremacy came from the earliest progressives. One of the first things the earliest progressives did at the end of the 19th century, early 20th century, one of the first things they did was take over the law schools, starting with Harvard, and that was on purpose. In fact, you want to have some real fun? Even go find like conservative attorneys, like hardcore right-wing attorneys, and ask them, hey, how much time did you spend studying the Constitution in law school? And then be prepared for a very disappointing answer. Because unless they went to like 3 law schools in America, the answer is going to be not much. But they spent a hell of a lot of time discussing and studying what people's opinions on the Constitution were. Well, let me rephrase that. Not the opinions of the people who wrote it, of course. No. Not those opinions, okay? The people who are rewriting it, their opinions, okay? Their opinions. When the country was founded, one of the books that was very common in every library in America amongst the learned class that your founding fathers would have belonged to was a tome known as Blackstone's Commentaries on the Laws of England. Sometimes this is referred to as British common law. And remember, your founding fathers were all originally British subjects before they became American citizens, okay? But Blackstone didn't come up with this either. Blackstone just codified something in modern at the time, so 18th century, in modern Western parlance, what had been long discussed throughout Christianity for literally a millennia and a half. A lot of times the term natural law is given, you have to give a copyright royalty to St. Thomas Aquinas for that term, but it predates him as well. Maybe he coined the term, but the teaching goes all the way back to Augustine in terms of its hermeneutic, because it's based off of examples in the Bible, like when the Hebrew midwives are commanded by Pharaoh to abort the Jewish children. They don't obey, do they? Pharaoh is powerful. He's king after all, right? But he's not all powerful. There's a higher law than Pharaoh, right?
Yes.
Yes. And so because of that, they don't commit murder, even if the king tells them to. Even subtle things. For example, in first century Judea, it was illegal for a Jew to own a sword. One of the trade-offs that the Jews received in order to get a unique amount of religious freedom that Rome did not grant many of its other subjects. And it granted it to the Jews because they just got tired of killing them all the time. Because if they forced the Jews to worship something other than Jehovah or Yahweh, there would be violent rebellion. Jews would die, Romans would die, and they just said it's not worth it. So you can have your Yah, your Passover and your festivals. We'll let you guys have that. We'll let your Sanhedrin basically run you guys. Our potentate, our tetrarch will actually run the civil affairs. Your Sanhedrin can run the religious affairs, but you can't own weapons. Can't have a sword. And in the New Testament, Jesus actually tells his followers as they're about to go out and preach the gospel to get swords. That in and of itself is an example. of what we will later call civil disobedience, that there's higher laws. Now, we understand that Christ died for the sins of the world, but in the Roman mind, they put a sign over his head. What did it say? King of the Jews. Meaning that in the Roman mind, Christ was crucified for sedition, claiming to be the rightful ruler of the Jewish people when there is no king but Caesar. So there are multitudes of examples of this. Multitudes. All throughout the scriptures, there is a higher law. That which the Creator has revealed in the natural world. Our founders referred to this in our founding document as the laws of nature and nature's God. Things that were revealed throughout history to be eternal attributes and eternal truths. And what Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England did is codify that in English-speaking terms. And it essentially begins with this summation. There is no higher law than the law of Almighty God, and any man-made code that seeks to undo or defy that highest law is no law at all and must either be disbanded or disobeyed. And I just summarized the entirety of Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail and everything I just said, because he's quoting from all the same sources, in fact. This was the source of law in the United States from the time of our founding until the turn of the 20th century. The progressives understood they had to get rid of that. They also understood that if they didn't, you were never going to vote soup to nuts for their ideas all the way through. You were never going to do it. So they had to take their ideas out of being contested in elections and put them in the hands of those who aren't elected and therefore don't face the scrutiny of the voters and can just impose things and not be worried about voter backlash. They replaced what sometimes we refer to as natural law with what's called legal positivism. That was their theory. What is legal positivism? Essentially, it is any recognized human authority that says this is the law gets to make the law. So we went from the law is sourced on things that are eternally attributed and revealed. That's where the term inalienable comes from, pre-existent rights. That's an example of what we mean. We went from that to, well, if I own the guns or I wield the gavel, what I say is the law. Or kind of like ye be like God. We're God now. We make the rules. Over the next several decades, everything that's been done to put the country where we currently are, Roe v. Wade, establishing a right to privacy to the point that you can murder your own offspring, which doesn't exist, either the right to privacy or any such right anywhere, because frankly, it would violate the highest law against murder. So that's why it's not anywhere. Plyler versus Doe. You have to pay the freight and subsidize illegal aliens. They get to steal from you. Well, the highest law says don't steal. So we're going to abandon that now, and we want these illegals to steal from you. So they're going to get to do that. Kelo versus New London, private property laws. Well, that was a great century farm you had once. Now it's going to be a strip mall. These are not things people would have voted for at the time if just up on a referendum. That's why they had to be imposed. Look at marriage. They lost 32 consecutive marriage elections in this country from coast to coast. They were able to, quote unquote, redefine it because they took it out of the referendum process where people could vote. And they put it in the hands of unelected judges that people don't vote for. Almost everything that we voted for in this last election will be washed away by those we did not, unless the Trump administration applies the same heroic level of disruption to the courts that it has virtually everything else as we speak. Why is it up to the Trump administration? Because, let me go back to what I said at the beginning. There's a unijudiciary just like there's a uniparty. And controlled opposition Republicans, which is 85% of them, signed up for judicial supremacy in this country for decades. Why? Well, because it gave them the perfect political grift, the greatest grift of them all. I get to run on your issues, run on your values, get you to vote for me and entrench me in the system to the point that I am literally being jaws of life lifted into Senate votes like Mitch McConnell. And I sit here like from the Aaron Burr. I've got an advanced studies degree from the Aaron Burr Government Exists to Line My Pockets School of Government. And you're paying my salary while I rape yours and line my pockets with it. And I get to pretend like I care about your culture and your issues when I don't. And we'll have the battlefield be the courts so I don't have to fight on your behalf and do my damn job. And then every time the court's spoken, out comes Pontius Pilate yet again with the tisk tisk. Oh, you should know I believe in traditional marriage, but the courts have spoken, guys. The courts have spoken, guys. The courts have spoken. The courts have spoken. What can we do? It was the perfect grift for controlled opposition. Well, now it's up to the guy that they tried to assassinate twice and put in prison with 94 felonies. He's got nothing to lose. He can't even run again. So if there was ever a moment to put this canard in its place and smash this shibboleth of the damned, it is now. If it does not happen, my fear is we risk the courts end up doing to the Trump presidency the second go around what the scamdemic did to it the first time. President Trump and the administration should just follow the lead of Joe Biden. He openly bragged about, hey, I'm not listening to the courts. I'm just going to go ahead and unconstitutionally forgive student loan debt anyway. Did it a couple of times, as a matter of fact. That's your PR cover. And do what the people elected you to do, regardless of what the courts think. And then guess what? Here's how it's supposed to work. The courts have their interpretation of what the Constitution means, and we have an election next year, right? Democrats are welcome to run on that and make their case that what Trump is doing in opposition to the courts is not right, not lawful, not constitutional, and take their case to the people where the people can make the final say on what they think the Constitution means or not, correct?
Yes.
And Trump and the Republicans can take their case opposite and say, we are actually the ones upholding the Constitution. You don't have a right to immigrate to America. You don't have a right to steal from the American people. You don't have these rights. These things are wrong. And we are doing what we believe we were elected to do. And guess what? That tension isn't a crisis. It's good. It's healthy, actually. The crisis is the lack of the tension. The crisis is tell people that own 400 million guns to keep voting, and you'll be lucky if your votes count. And then if they do, we'll make you feel like they didn't count even after you won. Now, that's how you create a crisis. Can I get an amen on that?
Amen.
Because sooner or later, that cauldron boils over, does it not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sooner or later, you've castrated too many of our sons. You've chest-binded too many of our daughters. You've stolen too many of our retirements. You've shut down too many of our family farms. You've poisoned too many of our grandparents. And cows start kicking over lanterns. And we got fires. That's what creates the crisis. The tension is good. Let's have it out. The Trump administration should pursue what the people elected it to do, regardless of what these judges think. They can't enforce any of their edicts anyway. Democrats are welcome to see if they've got the votes to impeach him. They can see. We have an impeachment process. If you think he's a rogue executive, give it a shot. Take your case to the American people. We're the jury here, not the judges. We are. This country was not set up for a judge trial, but a jury trial. We're the jury, we the people. You make your case, we'll make ours. And the people can decide. If they want what the Democrats and the judges want, give them control of Congress next year and they can impeach Trump and seriously rein in his authority and power, right?
Yes.
And if they don't, they can vote for Trump and the Republicans next year and we just keep doing what we're doing and we see how it works out. That's the way this is supposed to work. But we won't get to that place if the Trump administration doesn't first tell the courts to take a flying leap, take your case to the American people. We did and we won. See if you can do the same. So we love introducing new partners here on the show. In fact, I am wearing one of our new partners here today. I don't know. Can I get this up on the... Can I get my leg up that high enough? Can you guys see that? There you go. Got my Tecovas boots here on. So I got these last week when we didn't have any snow. And I said, all right, man. So that's great. They look good. They're water resistant and everything, but they got to be comfortable, right? Otherwise, what's the point? All right. So, we had some mild weeks here. I took my Tecovas boots out there on my afternoon walks, getting the steps in, breaking them in. Let's see how they do, and they were comfy. It's not just tough, not just rugged. They're all those things. Especially right now, it's February 12th, and today is the first winter storm we have had all winter in Iowa. It's crazy. We're having it right now. So I had my Tecovas boots on this morning, braving all the snow, taking the 4-wheel drive truck. I'm starting to feel like more manly even doing this now. Todd, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. I mean, considering your baseline is middle-aged croc guy, this is saying something.
Loves pumpkin spice.
Yeah, this is the bar
yes.
that Tecovas had to reach.
I mean, between putting on these Tecovas boots and driving the pickup with the 4-wheel drive, is my voice getting deeper right now, or is it just me?
Let's not go too far.
It's the Steve Deace Show. We left, let's not go too far like 12 years
That's
ago.
True.
All right. All we do here is go too far. That's what we do. All right. So Tecovas offers quality Western boots for everyone, from generational ranchers and lifelong cowboys to first-time boot buyers born in Texas in 2015. Tecovas makes it easy for anyone to find their perfect boot. Every one of Tecovas boots are handcrafted with over 200 meticulous steps for broken-in comfort right out of the box. Whether it's a long day or a big night, your Tecovas are built to last and impress. And folks, this is why you need to know how comfortable these are and why you want to buy them, okay? Like I just told you. So feel free to add in positive comments when you buy them too. I love hearing from you guys. All right, email us, steve@stevedeace.com. Tell me. I've never been a big boot guy. So they came to me a couple months ago about doing this. I'm like, I'm not a big boot guy. They're like, these are really good boots. And I'm like, all right, let me try them myself. And you know what? I tried them before I told you about them. They are fantastic. All right. So right now, get 10% off your Tecovas.com. When you go to Tecovas.com/Steve, get 10% off at Tecovas.com/Steve. When you sign up for email or text, that's 10% off at TECOVAS, Tecovas.com/Steve. Tecovas.com/Steve. You can see the site for details. And Tecovas, point your toes west. They're very nice boots.
Yeah, they look sharp.
They do. All right, a couple more things in your montage, Aaron, that we have got to mention, okay? Man, I hate doing this, but I'm going to do it, Todd. All right.
What's that?
Speak to me and my fellow evangelical brethren like we just found out today you are a trad Catholic. We just found this out like 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Right, like I spend how much time every day like saying to so-called sola scriptura Protestants, well, where's that in the Bible? That's not in the Bible. That's not in the Bible. That's not in the Bible, right? Okay. Help us understand how it is that the Pope can just sit there and say, I want a wall around the country that I rule with my own private militia literally guarding me so people I don't want cannot get in. It's okay for me to do this. But if a nation does it, then they're all racist, bigots, misogynistic, xenophobic, homophobes. Can you help us to understand this? And there's no one in the church. And I mean, you got a massive college of cardinals. You've got a magisterium. No one stands up and says, I got to probably call Barbara Streisand on that. Nothing? Nothing. Can you talk to us like we just found out you were Catholic and we're just genuinely curious? How are we here with this?
Because this issue, this is not new vis-a-vis this Pope. I said it earlier today about here's the problem with this Pope. This is the fundamental problem. The Pope's chaotic application of moral and theological teaching means he can not only be easily dismissed, but also held in contempt for being so obviously co-opted and captured by political winds that let actual evil run amok.
That's extremely well said.
This is not the immigration issue. I've tried to walk people through this particular Pope on other moral issues we've talked about and how he communicates. Did you actually read the letter that he...
I did not, no.
If you read that in the same way that you're talking to me, set aside all of our biases, you think, oh, a good and holy man of some stripe writing about an issue. If you read that in a vacuum, he's not wrong because he does talk about legitimate nation state obligations to have laws, borders, etc. It's in there. But there's no context to the reality actually currently being faced, the incarnate reality we have, where you can paint this neutrally all you want to, but we have rapists and murderers and drug lords coming over right now. That's the real context of what we're talking about. And that's ultimately...
Human traffickers.
Ultimately, Steve,
where are the tears for the young women getting trafficked?
It's a real problem. That's the context and you have others. Cardinal Sarah from Nigeria. If you read him right now, it's orthodox, but it's clearly addressing the reality of the situation. Steve, you've said many times before, ultimately, you'll say it, but are we saved because of our theological
preciseness?
Preciseness, yep. To testimony, no, it's ultimately, we're not constructs. We are actual real people. And the way the Pope addressed this is here's the irony of all of this. He drifts constantly into this humanism that is almost undecipherable from a non-Christian humanism all the time. But this letter that he put out and the way he's addressing it is utterly inhumane. It's not addressing real pain and suffering, real victims. And then he gets drunk on this particular issue. Where was his leadership on the trans issue globally?
I have seen a couple of Catholics come out. One, I can't remember the name of this author at First Things, which is a Catholic website, correct? I can't remember his name. And I saw the reaction to what he wrote about this letter to American bishops. And the reaction was like, I cannot believe this author is saying this about the Pope. Probably the most prominent one that I've seen is Michael Knowles at the Daily Wire, who said yesterday, hey, I think a lot of the criticisms of Pope Francis probably coming from Protestants who don't really understand X, Y, and Z. It's something about ex cathedra. These are foreign terms.
Which we've talked about before.
Yeah, these are foreign terms to a lot of Protestants.
Like when the Pope is giving an opinion and when he is speaking on behalf of the church. Yeah.
But he said he's very concerned about this. Is what you just ended up the reason why I'm seeing some extra concern and hand-wringing from Catholics, like the two examples that I just mentioned, as opposed to just a daily, the Pope is technically true, but the way he said it is weird and doesn't do anybody any favors.
Which is him all the time.
Let's explore the point you made about Christian, a sort of Christian humanism and humanism as a construct, right? Because we've referenced before the old Luther and Erasmus debates, and Erasmus was considered kind of a Christian humanism, humanist for that time.
It's an old conversation.
So let's make sure we define that term. Would we say that a Christian humanism would be a debate about to what extent the Word of God applies to the human condition given its complexities, vis-a-vis we openly redefine the Word of God based on human desires and needs? Would you say that is a a good understanding of the distinction between the two terms?
I think it's reasonable that it's in there, but I think
there's a reason why I'm asking that question.
Well,
I want to establish that
the debate is
first.
closer to what you and I go back and forth on in our Romans conversation. A lot of Christian humanism has to do ultimately how far does the sovereignty of God go,
Correct.
and how much relation or how much give and take is there.
How much does the Word of God have to account for the limitations of human nature, or does it account for it at all? With just, for example, full out election and things of that nature, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Because when I hear you make that distinction, that he is removing these things from a theological context into a purely human one, what I hear is rather than guiding a church, he views himself as the head of a political party. And political parties have coalitions, and coalitions have to be managed. Okay. And I've got my South American coalition, which is where this Pope actually comes from. So if we looked at the Catholic Church in the context that I think this Pope often reigns over the church, is a political party, right? And so there's the blue, use our parlance, the blue states in South America that are overrun with, we've talked about before, liberation theology and neo-Marxism and open borders, and that's his thing. And he's a native of that camp, okay? All right? And everybody agrees in the Catholic Church, both red and blue state, that abortion's bad. So their language on that is really good, okay? But on these other issues, okay? So in other words, even when their language is good, it's not necessarily from the right premise. It's because humanistically, they've come to an agreement that it's okay to be militant on this issue. But on these other things, well, we've got a coalition to manage here. All right, and there's some parts of the world that we represent that don't have the same views on these things as other parts of the world. That is how a political party manages itself. It manages itself humanistically. It has coalitions that at various times are ascendant and descendant, and sometimes have to take a backseat to other aspects and other coalitions, as opposed to a transcendent institution that those coalitions submit to in order to follow and partake in its mission. Does any of that make sense at all?
It makes sense. I don't think you're right, and I wish you were.
You wish I was, because I thought that was actually fairly condemning. But go ahead.
Oh, it is fairly condemning. But you're talking.
You think it might be worse than that?
Yeah, this Pope actually does think he's being theological.
Oh.
On these things, and he's wrong. I called him yesterday, maybe, or the day before. This is just the Mike Pence papacy. That's what this is. I mean, it's constantly saying weakness is the same thing as meekness.
So
and
it's sincere, is what you think. It's coming from a sincere place, not from just a strategic or cunning place.
The political thing you're talking about, again, a tale as old as time. You're talking about the Borgia popes, things like that. They turn this into a political. We go centuries back on that. But that's what's it. This is actually his theology, and again, in the most neutral possible terms.
So you view him as taking the liberation theology of the part of the world that he is from and injecting it into the papacy and infesting the rest of the church with it, is kind of what you're saying.
Oh, it's absolutely. But still, nonetheless, you read what he wrote, and it's not addressing this. He's gone down that road before. That's not that. You're not reading a radical treatise of liberation theology. There's a lot of conservatives who have come out and said, if you just read this and it's not applied to what is actually going on, there's nothing heretical out there. He does check the boxes of, you can have borders, you can have laws, that's understandable, but we also have to have compassion. We all agree at that.
Yep.
But here's what's actually happening. It's not a value neutral situation right now. There's real blood. You can't keep talking about these things out of context.
Hence the Mike
Real
Pence
life
analogy,
is happening.
like it's 2004, and these are mutually, beneficial sides of disagreement that deserve equal moral weighting, essentially.
Right.
Okay, I got that.
So this would be more relevant. Let's put it this way, in a hypothetical, since those are always a lot of fun. A hypothetical. Let's say we had an open border policy for years, okay? Or maybe we didn't have an open border and we just had a bunch of immigrants kind of leaking in through the cracks. Instead of just deporting them, we're putting them in labor camps. Would this letter be more appropriate for that?
If we
scenario.
I guess we're closer because
because it's what I'm trying to say is it's completely out of the context and what's actually happening right now with the U.S. trying to actually enforce laws.
I just wanted to make sure I was not reading, putting words into your mouth. It seems you're painting an injustice akin to FDR and Japanese.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
yes,
so,
that's what I'm trying to say. Is that what's happening right now is not an injustice, and this letter is being written. Yeah, being written as if an injustice is happening, even though everything within that letter is technically to the law, letter of the law.
And this is where he walks around being ethereal, which is the same thing with, I think, Pachamama and all kinds of stuff. He's constantly in this 1960s hippie Christian cloud, and kind Jesus. But this is, like you said, I didn't come to bring peace. I came with a sword. I came to make things uncomfortable. And the Pope is constantly trying to go to this baseline comfort. Why can't we all get along? And that's not the gospel.
One last thing I want to address, and then we get to buy, sell, or hold next hour. Congresswoman Luna's, the committee that she's going to she's going to oversee, looking into, and she already said yesterday, the preliminary information that she saw, she believes there were 2 shooters at the Kennedy assassination. So, I think that's wonderful. My encouragement to her, man, just very simple: the truth, nothing but the truth, and the whole truth. Tell us the whole truth. Tell us everything. It's just time.
Given how much she's promoted this over the past week or so, I think she's very excited.
Yes. I mean, this is the moment now where no more noble lies, as if there were any. We're in Dark Knight Rises territory now. Okay, we told each other too many noble lies, and then Bane just basically used that to take complete control over. Okay, and put us on an existential cliff here. It's time now to let the truth have its day. It's time for the truth to be its own reward now. It's just time to tell the truth now.
I'm glad you used a superhero analogy, because this is going to be must-see TV. I mean, and she has a choice to make. You can make this Avengers Endgame, or you can make this all of the Marvel movies that have mostly come out after this.
Yes.
Really, because of what? Is it just...
Or it can be the Eternals, Black Widow.
Is it just a show? Is it just we got to make a movie because we got to make some money now? Or are you really want this to be the truth in full? That's going to be... she needs to be very focused on what her goals are.
Ma'am, you've got your shot.
Yeah.
Take it. Hour 2 is next. And greetings, back with Hour 2, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd and Aaron McIntyre and all of you, and you can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And then also don't forget, please, to subscribe to our new YouTube channel. We're trying to get re-going there after so much censorship for telling you too much truth over the last few years. So help us to reboot that page at Deace Show on YouTube. Again, that's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then if you love the podcast, please declare your love for us. If you haven't done this either, leave us a 5-star review, whichever platform is your podcast of choice. And then also hit subscribe, or on iTunes, if you're there, follow. That way, every time we do a new show, it shows up in your feed every single time. Thank you if you've done those things for us. We appreciate each and every one. And now, folks, it is time for our friends over at My Patriot Supply, because I know what you're thinking. We won. Take a victory lap. Let's relax. No, this is actually the time to be even more vigilant, because the evil is just not going to say, man, that's so great. You guys got your act together and won this last election. No. So this is the moment now to make sure that could never happen here, just in case it happens where you are. Because folks, sadly, in Western Carolina were saying that about this time a year ago. And people in LA were saying this about this time a year ago. All right. So just make sure you're ready. All right. Get the mega 3-month emergency food kit with a supersized discount right now from our friends at My Patriot Supply. Each of these kits now, the mega kit, over 2,500 calories a day, good for 90 days, delicious meals and extras, breakfast, lunch, dinner, even drinks and snacks, dozens of different varieties you can mix and match as well. Last for up to 25 years with the right storage and will still taste like it was cooked at home. All right. So again, make sure you're ready for that. Could never happen here. When it happens here. I got ready. My last straw was I saw what happened in Western Carolina, sadly, last fall. I got a hold of my own landing page, and I'm like, all right, man, load me up. All right. So if you order today by 3 p.m., they'll ship your order within the same day, so you'll get that peace of mind right away. All right. And your mega emergency food kit includes free shipping, a disaster replacement warranty, and 24/7 U.S.-based support. This special discount available this week only if you go to my landing page at preparewithdace.com and secure that peace of mind with a $250 discount. All right. Preparewithdace.com, that massive $250 discount and free shipping when you go to preparewithdace.com. And now we go to buy, sell, or hold. And indeed, Aaron, you have the submissions. Todd, you and I have yet to see them, but we're about to. We are then going to decide, are we buying it? Are we selling it? All right. If at any point in time you determine you're going to use your hold, then in violation of the dude code, you must be humiliated. Don't you agree? Humiliation ritual is in order.
That's fine.
That's fine. All right. So you've got to serve as Lindsey Graham's after-hours intern for a month if you put a hold on. One of Lindsey's full cycles. A solid month of a Lindsey Graham cycle.
I see what you did there.
You see what I did there? Yeah.
Let's move on.
And you're his after-hours intern. Thoughts?
No.
No?
No.
It's probably the best thought of them all in response to that. All right, Aaron, let's go.
We will begin with John Baxter, who says after Kash Patel is confirmed, Trump should call for a primetime address to the nation where he introduces Patel as FBI director and, after a few remarks, gives the microphone to Patel, where Patel reads the names from the Epstein list live on air, taking brief moments of pause to sign off on arrest warrants.
I love this.
Yes.
I love it. I'm in. I love the presentation aspect of it. I absolutely love it. I'm a buy. It's a great idea.
Yeah, it's honestly, now that it's malfeasance if you don't.
Are you not entertained? Yes. Well, now I am quite entertained, as a matter of fact. Yes.
Yeah, like I said, this has been a fascinating 3+ weeks now. But as we said yesterday, I'm still waiting on jail. Jail needs to happen.
Next, we go to Aaron Reale, who says the Trump administration should respond to every judge trying to stop their executive orders with a letter containing the J.D. Vance "I really don't care, Margaret" meme, and the parts of the Constitution talking about the executive branch.
I'm totally fine with it, but I think so I'll buy, but I think it has to start with I don't really care, Margaret attitude about this. It has to start there. And I go back to Trump's first term, and we all in writing media had been given a heads up. I think it was, what was the issue? Was it the courts said that you had to count illegals in the census and the Trump administration didn't want to do it? Was that what it was? I think that was the issue.
It sounds
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
That Trump had finally had enough of the universal, because we got introduced to the phrase universal injunction. Okay, which also exists nowhere in the Constitution, by the way. That, in other words, some federal judge from some, blue district can slap a universal injunction on something and make it the law of the land in 3 seconds, right? So it's the law in Alabama too, right? And so they finally had their fill of it. I think the last straw was that some federal judge tried to slap a universal injunction against the Trump administration's plan to not count illegals in the census. I think that's what it was. And so we had all been given a huge tip that the time has come. They've had enough. They're going to defy this. And there was a massive event with conservative media types that were there at the White House and everything else. And it ended up being a big event, but they ended up not doing that as everybody anticipated. They ended up not announcing it. And it came out afterwards that essentially Bill Barr said that he would not support Trump as AG if he did this. And at the time, it was just determined that it was a higher priority to get Bill Barr to end the Russian collusion garbage and finish that task then piss him off too much by doing this. So they acquiesced to his demand, and he ended up, to his credit, he did end up delivering on ending the Russian collusion hoax. Okay, but that was the one time that they were contemplating telling the courts to go jump in a lake. Okay, so I don't really care. Margaret is going to have to be like a life verse for this administration. Otherwise, they're going to use the courts to do to Trump's second term what they used the scamdemic to do to his first.
Agreed.
Next up, we will go to Battle Mage Nerd, who says, if Gunn's Superman fails at the box office, that's it for DC Comics, if not mainstream comics as a whole. A lot riding on this by
there's a ton writing on it. That might be too much, just because these characters are so uniquely entrenched within the zeitgeist of Americana in the last couple of generations. That might be going too far. But so here's the thing. Aaron, you render a verdict here. I sell the letter of what he wrote, but I buy the spirit of it. Okay?
Sure.
That much is writing on this. I think it's going too far to say they'll be just cast aside. I do think the future standing of these American myths could very well be riding on Gunn's Superman film, but I don't see them going extinct just because they're too entrenched in the American psyche at the same time. But I agree with the spirit of it, disagree with the letter of it. You guys decided that's a buy or a sell.
Yeah, it seems to be going too far. I do think Gunn, even the choice of Gunn, could be making a calculation and have an understanding that the golden age of comic book storytelling, where they went broadcast into the masses as far as possible, at least for the time being in this generation, we can't get there anymore. The choice of Gunn, I mean, he's within the Marvel universe. He's the Guardians of the Galaxy guy. Isn't that, out of the whole Avengers lore that we just got done, isn't that like the weirdest corner of the whole thing?
Yes.
Like who knew about this stuff? He seems to be taking Superman, like realizing, I don't think, and I'm not even going to try to make one that is for everybody anymore. I mean, I knew there was a dog named Crypto, but nobody knows, except unless you're a superhero geek, who most of the people in that trailer is. Hawk Girl, that Mr. Fantastic, and things like that. I think he's going to make a superhero movie that is like Guardians of the Galaxy. It's weirder. It's more comic booky. And a lot of the normies it's not going to be their cup of tea, but maybe he's just going to make a great comic book movie, and that's going to be enough, and it's going to kind of be back in its place. That would be a pretty smart middle ground.
Yeah,
for me.
I've gone from listening to continued interviews and comments. I've gone from my initial concern when he was announced as all the guy knows how to do is irreverent material. This is not an irreverent character at all. Okay. I mean, it's this guy's idealism on steroids, and he was intended to be, okay? Talking about Superman. I've gone from now thinking, based on his comments and looking at the first look of the movie and the way that they, the marketing and the branding, I think he's going to play this actually uber safe. I think that he's not, I think that this is just, I think he realizes, listen, man, Superman is the extent of Born on Third and credited with a triple, okay? It'd be great if I hit a home run, but really all I need is a sac fly to bring the runner home. You know what I'm saying? So I don't need to swing for the fences here and overreach. I need to reestablish the credibility of this entire market, and then creative themes can be, they can be expanded and reinterpreted moving forward. But I think he's going to just try to get the ball in play.
Yeah, but I don't think he can reestablish the credibility of the market anymore the way it was. Like look at all of the actors in Marvel just recently came out in we played it on the show, didn't we? Anthony Mackie can't get his act together. I mean, there's the group of people that went out and watched these movies from the beginning because out of nowhere Robert Downey Jr. made Iron Man cool, and then they kept connecting the dots. People are burnt out on the whole thing. He's he'd be dumb to even try to return it. There's a lot of people who won't go. They're just, and understandably so. So I might be one of them, quite frankly. I mean, I better hear some incredible word of mouth about this thing from non-comic book geeks, because I'm against that crowd too. But those are the ones that are going to keep these fires burning no matter what, because this is a pseudo-religion to them. He's better off playing to what they want than what the masses want, because a lot of the masses are just fed up with comic book world and the actors who make them, because they, this election happened. And a lot of the people that make the comic book stuff were on the wrong side of that.
Point of order here, and I'm every much to blame as Steve is here, because I just kind of assented without even thinking about it. Free Exercise says, sell in the letter, buy in the spirit of it. Sounds like a hold to me.
Oh, so I need to declare. All right, then I will sell. Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. Thank you for that. That's a good rebuke. I respect it. Thank you.
He saved you, man.
Dan Versteeg says...
It's also why I appreciated it.
Dan Versteeg says, House Republicans will not be able to agree on any reconciliation bill, whether it be one or two bills.
Buy.
Yeah, that sounds legit.
I will buy that, yeah.
You could just sense when we had last week Senator Ron Johnson on... like he was telling us as honestly could, I'm surrounded by losers and idiots.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also think you're sensing, again... I think the Trump administration, man, is swinging for the fences on so many fronts right now on its own, knowing that expectations of what they can get when things have to formally go through Congress are going to greatly
all
diminish.
They can in their power.
Yeah.
Do all of us listening, all of us on the show want this to be codified in law? Yes, we absolutely do. But they're doing all they can in their power right now. All right, next up, going to G. Harmon. With football season over and baseball season still a way off, now is a good time to spend every weekend playing with and fighting with plastic lightsabers.
It's plastic lightsaber season. I love it. I love that. I'm going to buy. That's a great troll.
Because that guy clearly is picking up what I'm laying down.
Oh, that's great.
He understands the pathetic nature that we must deal with sooner rather than later, but I have no confidence that we will.
Football season, baseball season, fake lightsaber season. I like it. I like it a lot. Yes.
Next, the sniper BBB says Jim Tressel was picked as the new lieutenant governor of Ohio just to personally annoy Steve Deace.
I don't have anything against it. Doesn't bother me at all. I don't have anything against it at all. Okay, I don't care. I mean, I don't care that Jim made sure his players had cars and tattoos. I mean, I don't care. That's what he got busted for. Then he lied about it ultimately. But, I don't care. Everybody's getting cars, tattoos, and whatever they want. I could just say Jim Tressel was a man ahead of his time. I don't care. So sell.
Todd.
Sell.
Okay. Next we go to Brad Andrews. Trump's approach pre-election on things like abortion, rejection of Project 2025, etc., is akin to righteous deception in the Bible. Rahab misled, Jael deceived, Joseph concealed. May not be conventional, but history shows God often works through the shrewd and strategic means.
I think that there is something to this. We've alluded to it in our own conversations. I think that I don't think Trump understands much of what you wrote there. But do I think it is very possible that he just got together with these people? We're just going to lie our asses off to these people. All they do is lie about us. We're just going to lie, do whatever we can to win, and then we're going to do whatever we want. I mean, I could totally buy that. I could absolutely, totally buy that. Okay. And frankly, it makes me, I start thinking, moving forward in the future, through a more biblical lens, right? Do I have to sit, let's just say I ran for office someday. What would be the incentive to go and tell a whole bunch of people that are never going to treat me fairly, never going to vote for me? Why do I have to just open my spleen up to them all the time? Why do I have to do that?
Oh, totally agree.
You know what I'm saying?
Totally agree.
I think that absolutely, or Trump's bipolar, because it's not like the stuff he's done on these issues over a period of years circumvents his talking points during the campaign. It immediately contradicted his talking points. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. This is a completely, from the moment he took office on these issues, is a completely different vibe than anything he communicated out of his own mouth during the course of even the primary campaign. Okay? Not once. There was, like when he said to my old producer, Rebecca, on Fox, live on national TV, well, we got to win elections. There wasn't like a wink, wink, or, you know, elbow rub. I mean, just from the very beginning, he gave no hint to the wider masses at all that this was some kind of subterfuge. And then the minute he took the Oval Office, it was like
bragging about overturning Roe,
yes,
addressing the March for Life.
Yes. Then the minute he took office, like, all right, guys, we won. Let's just go ahead and do whatever the hell we want now. I mean, I don't know what other conclusion you can draw from that other than you think the guy's clinically bipolar. Those are the only two options.
Yeah, over here, and this show has established it since its beginning, you cannot do evil so that good may come of it.
Right?
Yep.
But over here, and we're going to have to figure this, apply it situationally. Over here is, and I did this recently with some degree of controversy online, but judge not lest ye be judged. By the standard you judge others, so too you will be judged by. What you're describing here often falls into that camp. Mm-hmm. We're not setting up the terms of engagement. You did. And now we're making you choke on them. Yep. That's absolutely the level of shrewdness that I'm all for. Like all of the, and this has to do with the book you wrote about the 10 rules of political warfare. Never accept their premise. Mm-hmm. Now, this is even, I think you'll appreciate, not only is this not accepting their premise, this is beating them over the head with their own premise. Mm-hmm. I'm absolutely fine with that because...
I mean, if an American general refuses to go on TV, and if you take a bunch of our hostages, yes, and if he refuses to go on TV and says, tomorrow at 10 a.m.,
right?
Okay, even though he knows a mission is coming. General, we've heard that tomorrow at 10 a.m., you guys are launching a mission to deep within Gaza to recover the American hostages. Did he violate the biblical commandment against bearing false witness if he doesn't say, why, yes, and in fact, we're coming in through the southern part of we're coming in through the southern part of the city, and we're actually going to launch F-16s at approximately 400 hours. No, of course not, right?
Right.
So then the question comes, then is the level of conflict, so because let me put it this way, there's a hierarchy of values, right? And there's a hierarchy of values within the 10 Commandments, yes, right? Okay. You can never tell a lie your entire life. If you fashion something other than the God of the Bible as your God, you're going to hell. But they're both commandments, but they're not all equally weighted. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. They're in an order for a reason. All right. They represent a hierarchy of values. And so therefore, when a Rahab the prostitute or a Corrie ten Boom or some of the other examples that were cited there from the scriptures of deception, how about Boaz? All right, how about the way he deceives or is shrewd with the kinsman redeemer who he wants to marry Naomi because he loves her and he knows the kinsman redeemer does not. So he tells him things that are kind of true from Ben Kenobi's certain point of view in order to get him to relinquish his authority in the situation so he can marry the woman he loves, right? How is that union blessed? The son they have is put in the line of the Messiah. Because he put earnest love for this woman, sacrificial love for this woman ahead of himself. And so that's a higher value, right? Yeah. Okay. So the question then becomes, is subterfuge merited because a higher moral value is at stake? Now, a higher moral value is not simply your ambitions. Or it's really hard to tell the truth about this and I don't want to face the backlash. That's not a higher moral value. We all agree on that, right? Okay. But the higher moral value might be the difference between demonic communists getting one last election win to finish us off as a country, or beating them. That's the debate that needs to be had, is a higher moral value at stake that therefore subterfuge is justified. Okay?
Yeah, this is not really that complicated to me at the end of the day. The modern Democratic Party that lies to you about everything. The words they use, issue J6, Russiagate, all the time, as a track record of doing this, then gets to turn around and say, so, put your hand on the Bible and promise to tell the truth. No. Yeah. Explode that whole thing. This is not a trick. How do you think your faith gets to be used as this ridiculous suicide pact and trap? No.
So Joe Biden gets to just ignore judges for debt, to steal money from people with debt relief, but we're not allowed to do it, right? Unelected people get to tell your kids, oh, here's a drug to castrate yourself, but our unelected people can't do anything either. Hell to the no. That's not how this is going to work because we're in a war. All right. My only complaint about all this is, man, my life would have been a lot easier over the last year and a half if Trump or somebody high up in Trump world just would have said, hey, man, just on the down low, we're just going to lie our asses off about this. And I'd have kept it quiet. But my life would have been a lot easier the last year and a half if they just would have given me it. So, that's my only complaint. Why did you tell me this? Anyway, let's move on. That's my complaint about the whole thing.
Jim Stocker says Megan Basham's Shepherds for Sale book is the doge of evangelicalism.
Oh, that's high praise, but I'm going to sell because I'd give it higher praise. And I'd say doge is the government's version of Megan Basham's book. I would actually I'd give her book on the top line. But you know what? I'll buy it because I do. It's a brilliant metaphor. But I think I'd switch the order here.
I'm fine with it. It has a long way to go. We talked already today about the Pope and the bishops and their problems. My goodness, I mean the inability to get answers that are even remotely clear, even amongst the so-called Orthodox conservative side of the Protestant ledger right now. I mean, it's madness. The church across the board is a lesson in chaos right now.
Chipper says schools closed due to quote unquote possible winter weather way too soon these days.
I don't know. I'm not comfortable with that. Making a blanket statement also. I don't know.
So far, at least in Iowa, I don't know where you're writing this from, just within the last week, and they're 2 for 2. I mean, this one, they called it before the snow started falling, but they needed to call it. School shouldn't have been held today. And just last week, we had freezing rain that kind of came out of nowhere. And that, trust me, the roads were an ice skating
rink. And it was
rink.
really bad.
And they got students out of school about 2 hours early if they had not done that. So far, I don't.
Here's what listen, as a general rule, do we allow our young people to become too soft?
Oh, yes.
Yes. But we don't have to be Cro-Magnons, okay? If there's one place where we should probably err on the side of being too soft and gentle, it is having young drivers on the roads or out and around the roads in wintry driving conditions. There's plenty of other places we can go to put hair on their chest, okay? Without saying, hey, that your 15-year-old that just got their driver's permit has to drive to school in a winter storm and we're not sure if we're getting 3 inches or 7. You know what I'm saying? There's lots of other opportunities to put hair on their chest and toughen them up, okay? Without putting a bunch of missiles called automobiles on certain roads in road conditions. Lots of other places to do it.
Now, I grew up in rural Iowa, also homeschooled, but we had school functions that we did, extracurriculars that we did at the school. So we always paid attention when there were school closures or delays, what have you. And it does seem, and I don't know, maybe if it's different in an urban area than it was in rural area, but it seems like growing up, like the threshold for closing school was at least like 6 to 8 inches of snow already on the ground. And that's when we're going to start to think about whether that's different now and that's good, or but it does seem different now than it was for me growing up. But again, there's other factors at play too. Shot Clock Todd says Vivek Ramaswamy will be the next governor of Ohio.
Bye.
Sure. Okay. Seems reasonable.
Okay.
We're both a buy.
Jeffrey Preston Bezos Stan account says, regarding the discussion of the fourth turning concept, anytime a topic like that is engaged, we should ask ourselves if we want its premise to be true, and if so, why. That's not an automatic indictment that it's wrong or going to be wrong, rather just a check on how we listen. I think that's an interesting take.
I mean, because you want to know in any walk of life, am I doing eisegesis or exegesis? Am I imposing my perspectives on something, or am I letting the event or truth claim or source of truth confront me and from that point? So I think that's a good thing. That's called, biblically, that's how humility actually works, as a matter of fact. It's not a pious disposition of I'm a terrible person and here's my sackcloth and ash and I love stale cheese and it's the only food I eat. That's not what it is. Okay, that's actually another form of pride. That's a killer. Okay, but the biblical definition of humility is understanding truly your place in the cosmos. That's kind of what you're alluding to. So I'll buy it. Yeah.
I'll absolutely buy it. Now, unleash that principle on the heart of sports, bro. Watch.
Along those lines, got this bit of feedback this morning from Snarky Tea Smuggler, who says, listening to Steve, Todd, and Aaron's discussion on the fourth turning yesterday, they're struggling with the idea of millennials being the hero generation because they're thinking of millennials around Aaron's age, around 30. It may serve them well to consider that there are a lot of older millennials in our early 40s. J.D. Vance is a millennial. For some perspective. Buy, sell, or hold. We are a little too narrow in our scope, particularly me, too narrow in our scope about who counts as millennials yesterday.
I will sell because I don't have, my issue with it is not that the millennial generation would be the hero. I don't know the answer. My issue with it is that Billy Graham, maybe the most influential private citizen the country produced in an entire century, got overlooked. There's no reference of a sovereign God at all, but we mentioned homosexuality and LSD as things that demonstrated human progress. That was my issue with it. As Todd, you said yesterday, I thought it was thumb on the scale in terms of the interpretation of the paradigm the entire way.
Yeah, I'm selling.
But I love the expansion of reminder. There are older millennials like a J.D. Vance. I think that's a good point. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Don't take this personally, though. I mean, that's the thing that you get all kinds of letters. We weren't talking about you, so sure, you might older, younger. It's a generation. It's a type.
I didn't get that. I didn't get that sense from that piece of feedback. Next, we got a top 10 list. Nathan Kangol, top 10 song covers that are better than the original. Number 10, Tainted Love by Soft Cell.
I don't even know the original, but that's a great song, so I'll buy.
I don't know the original either.
9, I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. I didn't even know
I hate them both. I hate them both.
You hate them both?
Yeah, I hate them with the passion. Yeah.
Well, I'll buy. She at least matched it, and Dolly Parton's no slouch, so...
Dolly Parton was the original.
Yeah, she wrote the song. Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yep.
Yeah.
8, I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett. I forgot that was a cover.
I don't know who it's a cover of, but it's a great song, so I'll buy.
I can't remember who did the original, but I can hear the original in my head.
You can't remember. It's probably a buy.
Yeah. Number 7, Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor.
I hate both for the Prince version and her version. I hate the whole song. Hate it. Hate the song with an unbridled passion. Detest it, despise it, so I'll sell.
Tell us how you really feel, Steve. Number 6, Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix.
Way better than the Dylan original. 100%. Yes. I'll buy. Yeah, on that one.
I'll buy.
Number 5, Torn by Natalie Imbruglia.
Imbruglia. I didn't know it was a remake, but that is a great song. One of the best songs of the 90s, so I'll buy.
Number 4, Sound of Silence by Disturbed. Yeah.
It's amazing you can say that.
The original's pretty classic.
They're both really good.
Yeah. I guess I'll probably buy because it's just more my era.
Okay, Linger by Royal Otis, Blinded by the Light, Manfred Mann's Earth Band, and number 1, Hurt by Johnny Cash.
No, Linger by Otis. No, the original Cranberries version is an all-time classic that was on the very first mixtape I made for my wife. You can't fade that.
Linger's
Don't even
a
attempt
terrible
to.
Song.
Don't even attempt to.
Awful song.
Dolores Riordan, by the way, very devoted, faithful Catholic, as a matter of fact. Yeah. And she was pro-life.
Terrible song.
All-time great song. One of the great ballads of the decade. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, and now you got Trump early today calling for lower interest rates, and there's a lot of optimism about things, but hey, I know. Just remember, we haven't had a real estate market in America for a few years. It just really hasn't even been one, all right? We've had a lot of people getting a lot of equity in a home that they probably can't sell in order to not be able to afford a next level home they probably can't buy. All right. There has not been much of a real estate market, just some random relocations here or there the last few years here in the United States. So it's always good. In case you forgot this, back when we used to have a real estate market, we may have one again here this year. It's always good to make sure you've got an agent you can trust. We'll hook you up with one of those over at realestateagentsitrust.com. That's realestateagentsitrust.com, and whether it's across town, across the state, across the country, wherever you need to go, where you really want to get is across the finish line. Have an agent guide you through these tumultuous times. These, shall we even say, Todd, for old time's sake, unprecedented times.
Bing.
Indeed, they're still unprecedented. Okay. So, folks, make sure you got an agent you can trust. We have verified, validated their track record of success. You're going to find a lot of times these agents come from the audience, from the Blaze, so they got the same value system that you do as well. Go to realestateagentsitrust.com. Again, the name says it all. realestateagentsitrust.com. And this name says it all as well. He is the prophet of woe and lamentation. It is good to have back our good friend Daniel Horwitz, brother. And we've got some oldie but goodies. This is going to feel like you and I jumped in the DeLorean. We're in the time machine. We've done this show and these topics a time or two, but we keep coming back to these two fundamental issues. They keep reemerging. Let's talk about one that, I mean, you've written entire books about this, like Stolen Sovereignty, for example. And we are, my opening monologue today on the show, I think it's maybe the most important one I've done so far this year. And using your adage, which frankly you stole from Wayne Gretzky, and that's okay. If you're going to steal from the greatest, okay? But skate to where the puck is, right? Okay? And you can start to see now, we've reduced the Democratic Party into just their politicians behaving as fools in public, but their ideology is still very much alive in these judges. And man, and I said at the top of the show today, if I could go back with the data I knew March 20th, April 20th, May 20th, and June 20th, and go back and do those shows on January 20th and February 20th, how much more of a difference might it have made, right? So looking ahead, you can see the plan here is to use the judges to do to a second Trump presidency what the scamdemic did to the first one, essentially paralyze it, okay? And at some point, they're going to have to pick this fight. Otherwise, they're going to let the courts just wash away every reason that we all voted for them last November. And I think the moment is now. If we can't get a guy that they tried to kill twice and put in prison with 94 felonies who doesn't have to run again either, okay, so he's really got nothing to lose. He should already be dead, frankly. Okay, if there was ever one of our guys to say to the courts, you know what, I'm going to have to see if actually enforce that before I'm going to do it. I think now's the time, Daniel.
Look, I mean, the Democrats have thrown out this moniker that Trump's a tyrant, but if you look at the polling data, everyone actually likes what he's doing. His policies were always more popular than he was personally, yet his personal popularity is higher than it's ever been in his first term. So even the Democrat media, when you watch their stories, they're like, yeah, well, the Democrats don't really have any leverage to fight back. He's standing on top of the world. You will never get a better opportunity. I wrote Stolen Sovereignty a decade ago because I warned for a time like this. I said, look, there's going to come a time where finally the dog caught the car, where we have a mandate, we have everything in place we want, at least at a federal level for the president and his authority. And I'm just going to tell you everything you want to do. If we accede to this notion that whatever flatulence comes out of the rear end of a single judge at any moment is irrevocably the law of the land. They are the sole and final expositor of the law and the Constitution and get to determine every political issue affecting the whole of the people with finality unless another court overturns it, then you're done. You're done because the left believes, remember, left believes that everything that ought to be must be. Everything that they politically desire is a constitutional imperative. So what we've learned over the past 2 weeks is that it's in the Constitution that any future baby dropped to an illegal alien is automatically a citizen. We've learned that a judge could appropriate funding for nonprofits. A judge could give standing to states in court to sue for more than 15% share NIH grants being used for overhead of a academic institution. We've learned that male prisoners that think they're females belong in a female prison. We've learned that they could block.
That was a Federalist Society judge, Royce Lambert, that gave us that butte, by the way.
Yep, that was a Republican appointee.
That's another lesson Trump needs to learn from the first term. You can't just rubber stamp whoever FedSoc gives you because they paid their dues and showed up at the cocktail party. But go ahead, yes.
No, exactly. And we've learned that, you can't, executive staff can't access executive data from the Treasury, but random doctors must be able to access a statement on transgenderism on CDC's website. There's nothing left. What's next? They're going to put an injunction on the Gulf of America, renaming, give standing to the Gulf as a body of water to sue, or maybe give standing to Hamas to sue against the ultimatum for Saturday. I mean, we can only guess what it is, but it's so absurd. And he has a megaphone. Now is the time to do that. And like anything else, you got to walk before you run. But this is the perfect opportunity because this is not even defying a court. A court doesn't have that power. So defying a court would be if the executive branch wants to execute a criminal, a murderer for a certain crime, And the court says, no, well, that situation violates the Eighth Amendment, and really it doesn't. So there you irrevocably do a positive action against a negative on something that pertains to criminal proceedings, which is within the jurisdiction of a court. Here, they're placing a positive on a negative action. You have to give out visas. You have to give out refugee status.
Yes.
They're gonna enjoin that.
They're demanding a course of action in response to their rulings, is what you're saying.
Put this on your website.
Yes.
I mean, this is the perfect example.
Yep.
If they put that on the website, that's their fault. I mean, this is the thing. You got to start from somewhere, and I think the website one is the perfect example. Now, connected to that is the public as a whole delegitimize them. I like the fact that Eli Crane and Andrew Clyde have announced articles of impeachment against two of the judges. I think, impeachment is a joke when it comes to presidents now, but they're not used to having that. And even if it goes nowhere, they're not going to want that on their record that someone filed a piece of legislation. You're going to want to start digging up their histories, treat them like the politicians they are until we get to the point where if we have irrevocably right and left divides in the political branches, why outsource that to the unelected branch that's the same manifestation of the Republican judges and Democrat ones, except, Steve, here's the difference. I agree with you that if you're going to appoint judges, you got to appoint ones more like Jim Ho than these other guys. But I'm just going to tell you.
We don't have a lot of Jim Ho's. Is that what you're going to say?
We don't have a lot of Jim Ho's.
Yeah.
Just like we don't have a lot of Ron DeSantis's and Chip Roy's and whatever at the elected level, but it's a one-way ratchet. I want to give you a perfect example because I wrote about this 3 days before the ruling came down. The Fifth Circuit, which is the most conservative circuit, rejected like 15-1, standing for doctors to sue Biden's transgender order, forcing doctors to prescribe hormone blockers. So the plaintiff was a general practitioner who would be on the hook potentially to prescribe and be fined. They said, you don't have standing. But then now a doctor could say, I can't practice medicine if I don't have some vague generalized reference on a CDC website to transgenderism. I mean, you can't win with this one-way ratchet. This notion that we could accede to judicial supremacism but will win the casino game is absurd. It's time to end the notion that the weakest unelected branch gets to be the sole and final expositor of the Constitution.
I honestly think we're at a point where I don't know that it's a majority of Americans. I don't even know that it's a majority of those who voted for Trump. But there's a higher number of people than ever I sense don't even care whether the process is valid or not. Just get me the results that I want. You see what I'm saying? Like when I was sent around the state of Iowa to intellectually explain that we could take the judges out for what they did in our state to try to redefine marriage in violation of our Constitution, I'd go to several places, Daniel. This was 15 years ago now, brother. I'd go to several places where I had this, I thought, really brilliant presentation. And people would just interrupt. We don't care. We don't care. We're just pissed off. We're tired of taking it from these fools year after year after year. We just want somebody to do something. We don't even care if it's legal. Just do it anyway. Okay? And I think that there is definitely some form of critical mass of that attitude. All right, just get us the results we want and screw the system that keeps screwing us. We don't care about the integrity of a process that we don't think has any integrity anyway. Use that to your advantage. Use Biden just openly bragging about defying the courts to steal from people and forgive student loan debt. Just use that as your PR shield. I mean, that's what I would do. And now is the time to do it with them when you've got the other side under assault on so many different fronts. Now is actually the time to do it. So they can't just fixate on just this one action.
That's a real astute point because for better, for worse, the public wants a king. I mean, we've been
for better, for worse. We've been on the. You and I've been on both sides of that. Yes, we have.
Yeah, right. They want a king.
Yes.
So if they like the outcome, like you're saying, now is the time to do that. And by the way, I just want to say this to Democrats. They're like, oh my gosh, a Trump king. None of us want an executive who's a king. But here's the deal. We all know that it's very likely in 4 years, Democrats come back, latest in 8 years, and they erase all of this with interest. Yet, we are told, but somehow we have no problem with a judiciary that's life tenured, unelected, and they could fix anything at any point, and you can never reverse that. So, I just had Ryan Walters, our mutual friend, on, and we were talking about because of a flatulence bomb from William Brenner in 1982, we now have hundreds of thousands of illegals flooding school districts.
You're talking about Plyler versus Doe? Is that what you're talking about?
Plyler versus Doe.
Yeah.
Some guy makes up in contravention to 130 years of case law that says illegals are as if they're physically standing outside the boundary. They're not physically here. It says, no, they have 14th Amendment right, 5th Amendment right to K through 12 education. And we just sit and take that. I mean, and there's no way to reverse that. Whereas everything Trump is doing, that if you don't like it, it can and will be reversed. And we've seen this again and again. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, we can't have him as a tyrant. But somehow that doesn't apply to the courts. It is astounding to me. We have one shot at this. And I think some of these recent cases are perfect examples. Appropriation, who you could hire, what money you could spend, what you could put on your website, what data you can access. It is so easy to message that, and I think that's his opportunity. It's actually a gift.
Final thing, and we could do an entire show on this too, but I got 3 minutes. This study from the University of Washington. Now, again, for people that forgot, those famous IHME models that governments all over the country use to shut you down, that said that we were going to have, sackcloth and ash, as Todd used to say, came from the University of Washington. All right, that's where the IHME models came from, the University of Washington. That same University of Washington just did and published the largest study of the COVID genetic serum jabs yet done in the United States. A 9,000 person sample of veterans whose medical records, of course, would be very available via the military epidemiological database and other processes. And essentially found the vaccines had very little efficacy, Daniel. Symptoms amongst those who took the boosters, especially, meaning they kept reloading the weapon and taking more and more jabs. The symptoms got progressively worse and more dangerous. It's a stunning study, given the source of the study and what it says, which we've been trying to warn people about for the last, 4 years.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to verify here. Is actually, I think he said 9,000.
Yep.
The observation was of 9 million.
Yes.
9 million veterans over a long period
You're
of
right.
time.
My bad. It was 9 million. Thank you. Yes.
9 million. You and I knew this, 3.5 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
So this proves.
And so did CDC, because that's how we found out from CDC's vSafe program that they created just to monitor the COVID vaccine. They knew about it the entire time. Yes.
They knew it the entire time. So you could find a snapshot of time from day 18 to day 22 where there's positive efficacy, kind of like, a snapshot of time with Republican efficacy that doesn't last for a while. But over time, it was negative efficacy. It's settled science. Here's the deal. One of the things I'm going to be watching for, hopefully RFK will get confirmed today. So then you're out of the woods with that. There's been a lot of talk about a lot of different things with Maha and food, and this is all nice. But the most backed by science and most imminent thing is to take mRNA out of the game. And that's what I'm looking to see if he's going to do in the first act. I mean, he has the mandate to do it. He has the data to do it. We haven't heard a lot of talk about it recently. I want to make sure that is done.
Amen. Good stuff, brother. Appreciate you. Take care.
See you next week.
You bet. Todd and Aaron, 2-minute warning. You get the final word. What say you?
Well, both of you attempting to bring something to pass that must be brought to pass for us to survive. But watching you both, you can see the wheels turn when you ultimately say, we the people, this is our time, this is our moment. And I constantly have the voice of that dude. But what if the people are retarded? I mean, as he says, the people want a king. That's where we are stuck right now. Are we able to see this through beyond more than one election cycle? We have reason to be skeptical.
I read a story about some judge stuck under a pus-infested rock somewhere out east. He's accusing the Trump administration of defying an order that some other judge gave to release billions of dollars in grants, blah, 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 blah. That's okay. It tells you, hopefully that means that the Trump administration is willfully disobeying that judge. What we need that is consistent over and over again. I just go back to what J.D. Vance said late last week, over the weekend actually, just saying these judges don't have the authority. I can't imagine Mike Pence saying that. So if that's the type of voice that's inside the West Wing right now, I'm cautiously optimistic that on some level we will see some real and consistent pushback to these unelected judges. Trump really has nothing to lose. He doesn't have anything to lose. He doesn't. And so if he does do that on a consistent basis, I'll just reiterate what I said. I can't remember if it was in overtime or elsewhere. If he consistently tells these unelected judges who just by the decree, I mean, this judge that told him to change the websites or to put back web pages up, he's doing that on the authority of thus saith me. If he pushes back on these judges with consistency, he will instantly become the most consequential president of my lifetime, even superseding Barack Obama. And unlike Barack Obama, I am flipping here for it, and I know you are too, listening and watching today.
Amen. We're back at it again tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. For subscribers to Blaze TV, we've got more buy, sell, or hold coming your way in today's overtime. We're going to record it right now. See you tomorrow. Romans 8:28.